I'm John Green. This is Crash Course Literature, and today we're going to be talking about A Tale of Two Cities, a book we all wanted to throw in a fire. A Tale of Two Cities is a tale of two cities, London and Paris. Jarvis Lorry, an elderly businessman, receives a message that says, "Wait for Mamselle at Dover." He replies with a mysterious phrase, "Recalled to life." He then meets with Lucy Minette, a beautiful 17-year-old girl, and he tells her that her father, whom she presumed was dead, is alive. Mr. Green, I now know what Lorry meant by recalled to life. I think we all do, me from the past. Anyways, Jarvis and Lucy go to Paris and meet Monsieur Defarge, a wine shop owner. He takes them to Lucy's father, Dr. Minette, who has gone mad due to being wrongfully imprisoned for 18 years. Father and daughter reunite. Meanwhile, in the streets of Saint Antoine, a cask of wine spills, causing the peasants to flock towards it and drink up every last drop. Dickens uses an anaphora of the word hunger to describe the starvation and the desperation for freedom of the French people. The time was to come when the wine too would be spilled on the street stones, and when the stain of it would be read upon many there. We then learn a bit more about Monsieur Defarge and his wife, Madame Defarge. Monsieur Defarge is talking to three men, and each calls the other Jacques, a code name for revolutionaries. Madame Defarge is in the background of things, at least for the first half of the book, and is constantly knitting. Mr. Green, is she knitting a sweater? Sadly, no, me from the past. She's actually knitting a list of people who are going to be chopped via guillotine. She'll become very fond of chopping people's heads off. 5 years later in England, a man named Charles Darnay is accused of being a French spy. His future seems bleak until Sidney Carton, an alcoholic attorney, points out that he himself bears a resemblance to Darnay, thus shattering the prosecution. Later on, Sidney Carton reveals that Darnay reminds him of what he could have been. In Paris, the Marquis Evrémonde, a cruel French aristocrat, leaves a party in a speeding carriage and runs over a child. In reparation, he throws a gold coin to the father and continues on his way. Once home, he meets with Charles Darnay, his nephew, who hides his identity as an Evrémonde in order to separate himself from the cruel French upper class. Later that night, the Marquis is killed. This story is getting juicy. Before we go on, let's talk about the author, Charles Dickens. Charles Dickens was born in 1812, one of 8 in a very poor family. In 1824, his father was sent to prison for debt. Charles Dickens was forced to work in a boot-blacking factory, only making 6 shillings a week. He only started writing in 1833, making various sketches for newspapers and magazines under the pseudonym Boz. Soon his clippings would become his first novel. Dickens' life is reflected in many of his books, like Oliver Twist. We can see a sympathy for the impoverished by the way he describes their hunger-filled lives and how he portrays the Marquis Evrémonde as a merciless jerk. It's time for this week's mystery document! The rules are simple. I get a document I've never seen before, and if I guess right, then I don't get shocked by the shock pen. And if I do, then I do get shocked. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief, it was the epoch of incredulity. It was a season of light, it was a season of darkness. It was a spring of hope, it was a winter of despair. We had everything before us. We had nothing before us. We were all going direct to heaven. We were all going direct the other way. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times? Stan, you're gonna get to shock me this time. What is it? A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens? Are you kidding me? I hate this so much. Oh my god.
John? Are you okay? John? Someone call an ambulance! Hi, I'm Stan Muller, and I'll be taking over this episode. Okay, where were we? Oh, right. 1 year later, in 1781, Charles Darnay gets permission from Dr. Minette to marry Lucy. However, during their honeymoon, Dr. Minette relapses back into his prison mindset. This event truly shows that Lucy is the golden thread that pulls her father from his past horrors, and that without her, he is lost. She was the golden thread that united him to a past beyond his misery and to a present beyond his misery. When Darnay returns from his honeymoon, Carton asks for friendship and puts aside all feelings of jealousy. Darnay accepts and tells Carton he is always welcome in their home. Fast forward to 1789, and the French Revolution has started. Led by the Defarges, the peasants storm the Bastille. This is when it all gets a bit confusing. Darnay heads to Paris to help a man named Gabelle who has been imprisoned by revolutionaries. Once there, Darnay is arrested for being an emigrated French aristocrat and is held at La Forest prison. After more than a year, Darnay is brought to trial and is finally released, only to be brought back the same day by the Defarges. At Darnay's trial, Monsieur Defarge reads a letter found in Dr. Manette's cell at the Bastille, explaining his imprisonment. Many years ago, two brothers by the name of Evermond had asked Dr. Manette for their help to tend a woman who one of them had raped and her brother, whom the same brother had stabbed. Fearing that Dr. Manette would turn them in, they sent him to the Bastille. Darnay is sentenced to death to pay for the crimes of his dad and his uncle. Carton, who is in Paris to rescue Darnay, remember the whole friendship thing? Overhears Madame Defarge planning on killing Lucy. Apparently, she is the surviving sibling of the man and woman who were killed by the Evermonds. And killing Charles Darnay just isn't enough. Didn't I tell you this whole thing would get confusing? Carton visits Darnay in prison, tricks him into switching clothes with him, and drugs him. Darnay goes to a waiting carriage while Carton awaits execution. Sidney Carton sacrifices himself to establish meaning to his life. It is a far, far better thing that I do than I have ever done. It is a far, far better rest than I go to that I have ever known. Thanks for watching, and John will see you next week. The show was produced and directed by Rena Zhang. The show was written by Rena Zhang and performed by Elizabeth Biasi and Shayla Torres. Thanks for watching Crash Course, and as we say in John's hometown, don't forget to be awesome.